Welcome to the field. Round 6 is in the books. Round 7 not far away because ANZAC footy. It's the ANZAC round, the biggest regular season game on the calendar. It is not far away, depending on when you're watching. Thanks for tuning in. We've got a double header on ANZAC Day. Of course, ANZAC Eve as well, if you do not mind. The footy comes round super quick whenever the ANZAC games are played. We've got Melbourne-Richmond on ANZAC Eve, and that's become a really big fixture on the calendar. May not be as big in terms of the contest. Melbourne will probably handle Richmond in that one, you'd imagine. But then on the big day, Collingwood and Essendon, and they both arrive in good shape. They both arrive having feeling pretty good about themselves. Essendon have won 3 of their past 4. And what about that win in Adelaide on the road? I know it's been hijacked by the Sam Draper. Did he lay on the footy? Was it holding the ball? All that discussion. But Essendon were really gritty. Essendon were honest, and they uncovered a potential star in the midfield, Sam Darham. I love the way he attacked the opposition. When they had the ball, he wanted to get it off them. So many midfielders today, and I don't blame them for it, but so many mids in today's footy, it's a little bit like your turn, my turn. You know, there's the best part of 350 to 375 disposals to go around per team. So naturally, if you're around the ball, you probably don't have that, or not all players have that real desire, that desperation to get the ball off a midfielder. They think, well, they've got it. We'll put a bit of pressure on, and then we'll try and win it the next time round. But this guy, Durham, he gets after the opposition. His numbers didn't jump off the page, 22 disposals, but it was the tackling. It was the pressure at clearance. So whether he was winning it or helping his team win it, or at least making the opposition clearances under pressure and making it easy for his defenders to mop that stuff up. He was outstanding around the ball. He's a good-sized athlete as well. He's probably about 6'1", 6'1.5". He's got long arms. He's got good reach around the ball. So, you know, if he can't lay the tackle, he can knock those footies down. So I loved his game. The emergence of him and a few others for Essendon certainly make them a more, I guess, prodigious and potent group around the footy for sure. They've got some bodies coming back as well. And then Collingwood, they've won 3 in a row, and that was a pretty potent and powerful performance against Port Adelaide at the MCG. There's a lot of P's there. Now, the Power, look, they fail another big test, but we'll put them to the side for a moment because this is about the Pies and the Bombers on ANZAC Day. Collingwood got back to close to their best. 8 goals in the first half. No, I think it was 9 goals, in the first half, 8 goals in the second half. Would have been a whole heap more. They kicked very inaccurately, 21 behinds, if you don't mind. So that could have been, 65, 70 points had the Collingwood players kicked a little bit more accurately. So, loved some of the cameos as well. Lipinski jumped up, and he's been so underrated for Collingwood in terms of their system and what he does and what he allows Jordan De Goey to do. I had a good look on the 7AFL socials a few weeks ago at Christian Petrarca and Alex Neil-Bullen, and how Neil-Bullen covers a lot for Petrarca and allows him to spit forward and be dangerous. Well, it's a similar proposition for De Goey and Lipinski. Now, De Goey doesn't go and stay forward, but he can certainly run hard forward, get downhill, and be aggressive because he knows Lipinski is often the highest forward, basically an extra midfielder. And on the weekend, it was Lipinski getting all of the prizes for that hard work. He kicked 4 goals. He's always up around that 17, 18 disposal mark. He's a really, really honest player. I love the way he goes about it. He's a hard worker. He's pretty understated. He's certainly important to the way the Pies go about it. So looking forward to seeing him again on ANZAC Day. A few others from Collingwood. Lockie Schultz is just starting to see the wheel turn. I thought he'd explode for the Pies, but it's been hard work for him, particularly, the Pies haven't been playing the best footy in the first 3 or 4 games, but he's up and about. He kicked a couple. It's great to see Bobby Hill give him an easy one, just make him feel better about himself as well. Mason Cox was pretty good. Kicked a couple of goals. He's just finding a way to do enough and remain dangerous, big Mason Cox. And then the stars, Dacos and De Goey, were really potent. So it's going to be a good contest. I don't know whether Durham could maybe even go to a De Goey and see whether he can match it physically. He's got the height and the length and probably the quickness, but does he have the raw power and the physicality to match it with Jordan De Goey? We shall see. I guess the other element to ANZAC Day these days is certainly the other game on the card, and it's a fascinating contest. Brisbane in Canberra against the Giants. Now, I presume, now I'm sitting down on a Monday night, Toby Green and Jesse Hogan will miss. Let's say they miss, and I think they both should miss. I'll touch on this now. It's going to talk about in a moment. Toby Green, for mine, look, I think a lot of people saying he should get off are thinking about the situation from the way they'd like to see the game adjudicated. In a perfect world, I don't think Toby Green should get suspended for that. But you've got to think about it in the world that we're living in. And the world that we're living in is saying if you jump off the ground and you turn your body, if you got to protect yourself, and that's probably what Green did. I think you could argue whether it was protection / collision. But if you turn to protect yourself and you hit the opposition in the head, whether they're injured or not, you're going to cop it. And, Toby Green is suspended. They'll try and get him off. It'll cost them 20 grand to argue he and Hogan at the tribunal in one night. And it's expensive night if you don't win either of those two situations. But the game is now saying you can only protect yourself if you also protect your opponent. Now, that's a funny thing to try and wrap your head around, but that is what they're saying. You can only protect yourself provided you protect your opponent. And Toby Green didn't meet that marker. Therefore, I thought he'd probably get 2 weeks, to be honest. Again, not because I think he deserves 2 weeks for that, but you've got to live in the world that we are in. And whenever you jump, whenever you turn to brace or bump or collide and you get someone in the head, you're in trouble. And we'll see whether Toby can get off that one, because they'll need him in Canberra as they would need Jesse Hogan. This one I'm a bit more black and white with. I think we just need to make a stand and just stop throwing arms, punches. Look, you'll argue to the death that wasn't a punch, and I'll probably agree with you. But the reality is it was some kind of strike to the head. And we have to say to AFL players and everyone else watching the game, that's unacceptable. You're 100 metres off the ball. Yeah, I get it. You're two big bulls that you want to, push each other around and stand your ground and have a presence. I understand that. I've been there. I've walked in those shoes. But whenever you throw an arm and it hits someone in the head, I guess that's a strike. And striking needs to be completely outlawed. So I can absolutely understand why Jesse Hogan was given a week. I think there were a couple earlier in the season that were embarrassing that they got off. The Hewitt and Neil one absolutely springs to mind there. But anyway, the Giants, if they haven't got those two, I think Brisbane can go in to Canberra on ANZAC night and win this game. I like the matchup too in terms of, ANZAC night in Canberra, the nation's capital. Brisbane, who are 2-4 now. You drop to 2-5 and you can forget about top 4 and you can start to get really worried about top 8 footy, because you are what your record says you are. And that goes for Brisbane and it goes for St Kilda. Ross Lyon's been doing a lot of talking about short breaks and tough preparations and young players being exposed to the level and, having only 4 or 5 days to prepare. Guess what? At some point, you are what your record says you are. And if you drop to 2-5, which the Saints are at risk of, they've got a big game this week, then you are what your record says you are. And if Brisbane and St Kilda, or one or the other, drops to 2-5, it's almost impossible. It is impossible, I think, to make top 4. You basically can't lose another game for the year. And even to make the top 8, you start to run the numbers. You've got 2 wins from 7 games. So you want to get busy. You're going to have to win about 70% on the way home to even make it, to give yourself a chance. So big business when it comes to Brisbane and the Saints. A couple of other things I want to talk about. Massive game on Saturday afternoon, twilight. Hopefully the weather is great. Carlton had a big game against the Giants last Saturday under the roof. Now they met the Cats, the Rampaging Cats. To be honest, if it's possible to be rampaging in an underrated manner, that's what the Cats are doing. They went to Brisbane in the rain and handled the Lions. Tyson Stengel's back in good form. Jeremy Cameron and Tom Hawkins each did not kick a goal. The first time, I believe, I saw a stat during the week. I'm not sure who tweeted it, so I apologise for not giving credit. I think that's something we do very poorly in this country. So I am sorry because I'm being poor myself, but I think it was the first time Cameron and Hawkins have played in the same team and both have been held goalless, and the Cats win easy. The Cats win easy, and Tom Stewart doesn't take much part in that game either. So that, to me, starts to typify and show the strength of this group in terms of the younger guys emerging. And this is what happened when they won the premiership. We saw De Koning and Holmes and a few others come in. Now we're seeing Ollie Henry bob up in the forward line. We're seeing, Close and Myers, who are still pretty young guys, really have an impact. We're seeing Stengel get back to some of his best form. Conway in the ruck. He's probably taken over from Stanley now. They'll probably do a 60-40 split, I'd imagine. Conway will probably play 3 in every 5. Stanley will come in and play fresh, and Stanley's a really good ruckman when he is fresh and able to get up and about and jump up high and run and cover the ground like the big athlete that he is. So the Cats are up and about, but so are Carlton. You had to be so pleased and impressed by the way they came back from a deficit against the Giants and got the job done. Charlie, 0 goals, 4. He keeps getting opportunities. He kicks 3, as does Big Harry, as does Tom De Koning, which leads me to my point about Carlton and their ruckman. Now, they look fantastic with Mark Pitnet in the ruck and De Koning floating forward and doing a bit of ruck work. But I maintain when push comes to shove late in the year, their best lineup will be De Koning in the ruck, Mackay as the backup, and that's the way they should go about it. I just don't think they can carry 2 ruckmen. De Koning, if he becomes a really dangerous week-to-week forward, maybe. I'm trying to think of a forward. Maybe, is he as dangerous as Hayden McLean? He probably is, maybe, thereabouts. But there's question marks about McLean and Amati and McDonald, are there not? So I'm just wondering whether De Koning can be dangerous enough. I'm not talking about goals because, saying it has to be a goal a week or, 1.5 goals a week, that's a bit unfair, and that's probably not the best way to measure it. But Carlton coaches will be having a look behind the goals. Okay, how many times does De Koning not read the situation and his opponent goes and chops off or impact Curnow in a one-on-one or Mackay in a one-on-one? They're the things that the Carlton coaches will be assessing, and then you're trying to offset that with, okay, what does Pitnet give us in centre bounce or in the hit-outs around the ground, because he is fantastic in that space. There's some rumour around that Patrick Cripps was the one who really said, let's have a look at Pitnet in the ruck in some of these contests and see if we can get our hands on the footy first. And I'll tell you what, it's worked wonders if that's true. So congrats to you, Paddy Cripps, if that is in fact a true story. So I do maintain long-term, I love the fact that they're using Pitnet at different stages because De Koning is still a young guy, and it's a big task to be able to carry that burden as a young ruckman all season. But I think when the whips are needed to be cracked, I think it'll be De Koning in the ruck, Mackay doing a bit of backup work, and then ideally you get Jack Martin in there as a third sort of marking type in the forward 50. We saw how dangerous he was late last season. A few other things worth tying up. The arc. I was at the Hawthorn and North Melbourne game. I was working. I didn't go voluntarily. The arc, now, we talk about it a lot, but it was at its absolute worst on Sunday, last Sunday, in the second quarter, I believe it was. 3 times inside 10 minutes, we referred a decision to the arc. The poor umpire kept having difficult decisions, and all 3 probably deserve to go to the arc. But the problem is it takes too long. It takes too long. We see tennis, and I'm not a tennis fan. I turn up to the Australian Open. I'm saying, where are all the lines people? There's nobody to call the ball in or out. They are able to play their game without any delay on ball tracking technology. We can't get a decision inside a minute for a goal or a behind, or whether a ball's been touched or it's hit the post. We can't get a decision inside a minute. And our game is built on speed and flow and energy and crowd involvement and engagement. Every time we go to the arc now, every time you see a ball go through the goals or go through for a score and you see the umpire unsure, looking for the central umpire, they come together, everyone in the stadium just rolls their eyes, throws their head back and says, here we go again. And to be honest, it's not because the goal umpires aren't making decisions. It's because it takes so long. If it takes 8 seconds for the edge to just go bang, there's a spike, it's a behind, easy as that, or there's nothing there, boom, play on. That's okay. We can handle that, particularly if it's going to help decide the outcome accurately of a big game. But it's taking way too long. Everyone in the media boxes, I was in the SEN box, Matty Richardson was beside me with Tony Shaw in the 3AW box, and we all just throw our hands in the air and say, here we go again. 3 times in 10 minutes. I know it's unlucky, but it just can't happen. We need to find a better way, either find the money or just come out and tell us that you can't do any better, because at the moment it is not good enough. This week on the 7 AFL socials, not necessarily a real insightful deep dive, but a look at Max Holmes, who is airborne at the moment. He's been moved to half back, and I think it suits him a lot. He's played some wing early in his career, tried to be moved to an inside mid. I think he was pretty good in that role, but going to half back, the game comes to him. So rarely is, the game, getting behind him when he's a midfielder and he's going to work his way back, or it's getting ahead of him. When he's playing halfback, everything's coming toward him and he can just be a downhill athlete. So he's really attacking the game. The vision I showed on the 7 AFL socials this week was him picking up a ground ball, and most guys are just going bang, 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 giving a handball in that situation. He picks it up. He looks at 2 Lions players in Darcy Wilmot and Kai Lohman and says, catch me if you can. And those guys are quick young guys. He just runs away. He runs off the line. He kicks it off the line. Tyson Stengel, who was in a little bit of space, reads the ball quickly. It's a 55-metre pass in the wet, on point. Tyson Stengel does the rest. That is the reason. So if clubs were looking at Max Holmes, trying to track him and think about, is he worth 7, 8, 900, $1 million more? Those are the things clubs are looking at and thinking, wow, if that can happen, if he can do the basics really well, which we're seeing from him, if he can do that once or twice a game, that's the game-breaking type of player that all clubs want to pay up for and want to pay a premium for. He's young. He's clearly established at the level, but now he's showing versatility. So we know he can play on the wing. We know he can hold his own as an inside mid, and he'd probably get a lot better if he had more experience in there. But off half back, he's becoming an absolute weapon. And it'll be interesting to see how he goes without Tom Stewart by his side against Carlton this week, with a bit more focus from the Carlton forwards in Owies and Durden and those types, whether they can quell some of his impact or he can prove to other teams and to his own team that he might be worth $1 million. That's what I had a look at on the 7 AFL socials. Make sure you check that out. Leave a comment. Do you think he'd be worth $1 million at your club? I certainly think he would be at mine. That's about it. It's a short, sharp, shiny version of the field this week. ANZAC footy, not far away. Enjoy that. We've got ANZAC Eve. We've got a doubleheader on ANZAC Day, and then we roll into a massive weekend of footy. Thanks for joining me. Make sure you subscribe, be a friend, tell a friend. Thanks to Pat McAfee for that line. Otherwise, enjoy the footy.